Yep.
Okay, thank you, sorry. You guys ready?
That we wanted to go over our preliminary budget in this work session. Just give you an overview of how we do things. Some of you are new to the council, so we wanted to give you kind of an idea what to expect over the next couple of months. This is just an opening slide here. Since September, typically the department heads give budget requests to our finance director, Lori Walker McGowan. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that. Anyway, she's in that process right now, and the department heads are giving her things as we speak. So, and she's keeping track of those. And from September through November, primarily, we will be setting up work sessions. We will also have finance committee meetings at least twice a month to go over the department budget requests, the existing fund balances, new expenses that we deal with, and look at what we're going to do as far as setting budgets for 2022. When we get into December, we have 2 council meetings. The first one is where we approve the tentative budget and approve that budget for advertising and public inspection, public comment. And then the second meeting, we would look at any changes and whatnot, and then approve the budget and any changes to the taxes and fees, and then that's the budget. We're good to go for 2022. So let me go over some background information that may help put this together. We talk about funds, F-U-N-D-S. It's what we use in governmental accounting. We have a general fund, for example, water fund, parks fund. Usually these funds are set up separately because the revenue from taxes or whatever needs to be kept separately. So, for example, the parks fund, we have a separate real estate tax for parks. That money collected, that income, needs to be kept separate and used for that purpose as it was intended for. So we keep that separate. It's like a separate checking account. And of course the income is your taxes or what have you. And your expenses, expenditures as you see there, or whatever costs you might have, personnel, wages, insurance, street signs, whatever the case may be, those are your expenses out of that fund. And that's what we look at throughout the year. You'll see a little bit later, we're projecting right now how we're going to end up the rest of this year, and then we're going to look at the prior years of spending and revenue collection and see what changes need to happen for 2022 and setting those budgets. This is, I know it's a little bit hard to see, but it just gives you an example of some of the funds that we deal with. The general fund obviously is the largest fund as far as tax related, and it's also maybe one of the most difficult to get to balance, and we'll talk about some of the reasons for that. But typically the general fund is, you would have your police services, street services, general government come out of that fund. Those expenses all associated with those services are in that fund. We have other funds here that maybe you don't even realize, but like street lighting is a separate real estate tax. Fire equipment, fire operating is separate line item taxes. Emergency medical service is a new tax that was added a year or 2 ago. Parks and recreation, as I mentioned, is a separate tax. And then there's utility fees that are there. We work in conjunction with the authority that sets those, the water and sewer rates, and the Borough Council sets the refuse rates. But it gives you an idea of the different funds and what the Finance Committee will be working on, as well as in our work sessions, what we will be reviewing these various funds underneath the borough umbrella. I mentioned the council and the authority, and so I wanted to clarify. The Borough Council sets the tax levies, the refuse fees, permit fees, and those kinds of things, those kinds of fees. The authority, on the other hand, sets the water rates and the sewer rates, and that's pretty much all they do. Of course, they manage the systems throughout the year, but they're responsible for setting the rates and looking at the budget. So we work hand in hand with the authority. All the employees are borough employees. We have a management agreement between the authority and council, the borough, for them, the authority, to set the rates, and the borough council to provide the labor and the equipment and all of that. And of course, appropriately take funds out of the water fund or the sewer fund, to compensate the borough for those services. Looking at our attributes, we have a beautiful community. We have a lot of services, is why some people would say your taxes are a little bit higher than some of your neighbors, but we do offer many, many excellent services: police, fire, EMS, street maintenance, street lighting, water, sewer, parks, libraries. We have a library here in town we make a significant contribution to every year. We help with public transportation. We have a good recycling program and composting facility. And we also have decent standards here as far as construction and housing. So we have a lot going for Bellefonte. We're I think a very high quality community with high quality services, a lot to be thankful for. But how do we pay for all these things is always the struggle and always the challenge. What makes the challenge interesting is we're only 1.8 square miles in geographic coverage, and I put the example there. Spring Township, which surrounds Bellefonte Borough, is 27.1 square miles, much, much bigger. What does that mean? When you add a new housing development, your real estate's going to increase, and you're going to have new wage earners on your books, so to speak, paying taxes in your municipality. So you get a double bump on your income, your tax income. So the borough struggles to see those bumps or see those increases because we don't have any room to grow. So that is a challenge. Keeping up with expenses, the wages, the cost of fuel. And someone mentioned natural gas a little bit ago. We as an employer have to pay those expenses as well, and we struggle to keep up with those costs. High percentage of non-taxable real property. We have county buildings, schools. We have all three. We have elementary, middle school, and high school all within the borough, plus a 100-acre tract of land that's in the school's ownership, and no taxes are being collected or paid on that property. We have borough parks, borough property, borough buildings, such train station, the museum, and on and on. There's churches, are non-taxable properties. Fire halls, cemeteries are all non-taxable properties. So I've looked at it in previous years, but my guess is between 25 and 35% of our properties are non-taxable properties, which is a struggle because that means the rest of 75% are paying the full load to carry all these services in one way or another as far as real estate and possibly earned income. The next area, we mentioned real estate and earned income. Most years they grow, some years they don't, believe it or not, and I'll show you an example of that. But generally speaking, whatever growth we have is not enough to keep up with expenses, that we as an employer, or like any other employer, is dealing with. We get our income from certain fees and taxes, and it's just not enough to keep up with the expenses of the services being provided. So we constantly review that. That's what the committee does. They're reviewing how we're providing the service. Is there any more efficient way to provide that service? This is a look at the 2020 census numbers, and it just looks at the Nittany Valley region. As you see, Bellefonte lost a little bit of population, so did Marion, but Marion Township's kind of a small rural township. Now Benner gained a lot, and I don't know right offhand whether they counted the new prison, Benner prison.
Half of that is county prison, is the correctional institute.
That's my guess, is some of that's
I
the
did some
county
research
new,
on that.
you know, figure what happened in the last 10 years. You know, the Benner prison came in beside Rockview, so I was wondering if that was the case. But generally speaking, you know, Spring Township has a healthy growth, Walker is decent, and so on. But we've lost in the last 10 years. In the 10 years prior to that, we lost population. So we're struggling as a community. It's not that we're losing houses, so to speak, but, you know, kids grow up, they go to college, and maybe they move, you know, to another part of the state or another state. So that's what's happening, I believe. Total assessed values comparison. So we have the Center County. This is a 10-year look from 2010 to 2019. Overall, Center County, we all know Center County's a very bright, vibrant area, you know, a lot of growth, a lot of activity overall. You know, it's growing in the last 10 years, roughly about 11%. That's very healthy. Spring Township did something similar, you know, actually a little bit more, 11.7%. Walker Township, 13, almost 14%, very healthy. You know, Bellefonte's down at 2.2% in 10 years. So that is not enough. That's not enough growth in our total assessed value. And I'll explain a little bit more about assessed values here in a moment. But our value that we collect real estate taxes on is not growing fast enough. We don't have those new housing developments being added to our tax base to make a difference, you know, to keep up with the costs that are rising each year. You know, some of this is very basic. Some of this, you know, most of you probably know, but I'd just like to go over it because sometimes people get confused when we talk about assessed values, a mill versus, and then market value. So I just want to take a few minutes and go over this. A mill represents $1 per $1,000 of assessed property value. The Center County Tax Office Assessment Office establishes the assessed value for each property. And right now, the last time the county was assessed was 1994. So you might have bought a house, you know, 5 years ago or whatever. It's not market value that we're collecting taxes on. We're collecting taxes on an assessed value from 1994. So that also can be a struggle for communities that are not growing. When you have a landlocked community, a core community that's struggling to grow, the assessed value not being changed for 20, 25 years has an impact on your revenue collection. And again, the market value is not the same as the assessed value. This is an example. You know, you might have paid $125,000 for your house, but it might be assessed at, say, $45,000. So this example takes an assessed value property of $45,000, and for, you know, 1 mil is $45. And now this gets into a little bit more explanation, but we have 3 taxing bodies: Center County government, the school district, and the borough itself. There were all 3 taxing bodies. Center County and the borough send their tax bills out in January. The school is on a different fiscal year. They usually send their bill out in July, so they go from July 1st to June 30th, where the borough and the county go from January 1 to December 31st. But if you take the 1 mil equals $45, and you start to add up the number of mills, the millage rates set, which these are actually good numbers, or maybe within a year or so, they're good numbers. We're looking at approximately 76 mills of total real estate taxes assessed on a $45,000 assessed property, you would be paying about a little over $3,400 annually in real estate taxes alone. So it's a struggle. There's 3 taxing bodies we deal with. We're just one of them. This just gives an example. The school district is the largest, has the highest number of mills that they're collecting. If you look at your tax bill for the school district, it's generally much, much higher than the borough and the county put together. And you can see the boroughs in the second place. We're high, but it goes back to the services we offer. And then the county having some growth throughout the county, they generally have a lower millage rate because they have the whole county to work with. And the growth in one area helps them, even if there's no growth in certain areas. This year, and going into last year, the year prior, 2020, the borough is working on a strategic management plan. We actually received a grant to do the management plan. It was a big deal. It is a big deal because it was a grant subsidized project where we as a borough are looking for advice, consulting advice on how to address the lack of growth, the difficulties we have on maintaining the same level of services, at an affordable rate, so that is a struggle. So through council's actions, we took on or accepted the grant. We took on the strategic management plan project, and then earlier this year, it was all finalized and wrapped up, and there's a number of recommendations. So it's meant to be part of the budget process. It's meant to be looked at, which we will be looking at it through the finance committee, the work sessions. We'll be looking at the goals set or proposed in the recommendations from the plan. But very, very obvious ones. Try to increase revenue. Obviously the consultants saw that we are struggling to find revenue. Goal number 2, develop a long-term financial plan for capital projects. These bigger projects that we deal with, whether it's water, sewer, streets, we struggle to put the money aside to replace a road. I know when Buddy was on council years ago, to do a water line, a sewer line, the curb, the road, the sidewalks, the numbers were staggering way back when, and they're far worse today. So we struggle with those bigger projects and trying to put the money aside so that in year 5, there's a certain amount of money ready for that project. We struggle to do that today. Goal 3, improve borough operations with increased efficiency. We're looking at how to, basically work smarter, more efficient in what we do. I showed you the number of services we provide. There are a lot of them, so we try to find ways, to do them more efficiently. Ones that come to mind is our street lighting. We switched to LED lighting, and we saved funds for street lighting. So that's just one small example. We've done some things with personnel on the refuse crews. We've done it in different departments, moving people around or reducing the amount of labor and changing the style of equipment we use. So we've tried to be more efficient, but yet we're always open for more improvement, continuous improvement. Goal 4, develop long-term environmental sustainability. The borough has spent a great deal of time on environmental plans, climate plans, energy plans. So it's part of the recommendations to continue on the path of seeing what can be done that's more sustainable in regard to the environment. going over the goals, one of the ones that stood out when I reviewed the recommendations, and we're asking council and the finance committee and the work sessions to think about this, and maybe even by the next council meeting come back with a recommendation. One of the goals or recommendations were to develop, it's called the Local Economic Revitalization Tax Assistance Program. The acronym is LERTA, but again, it's a program that can be set up here to assist property owners, give them an incentive to develop their property or put money into it without seeing the assessed value base increased. So if you're owner of, say, the Kreider Exchange building, one of the large buildings in our downtown, this might be an incentive for you to go in and renovate the building and not have to worry about your taxes going up for generally a 10-year period. And then it's a graduated scale, so it wouldn't be a full 10 years of 100% waivers. It would be a graduated scale, as is indicated in these paragraphs. Generally commercial, it's a 10-year program, 100% the first year, only the first year, and then 90% and 80% and so on. Generally is how it works, but the Borough Council can design that, and what we would need to do is get the cooperation with the county and the school district, the other two taxing bodies, to make it happen. And then we say to developers, or you could say it to renovators, whether you're doing a residential property, if that's part of the program. If it's just commercial, you say it to the commercial property owners. We have this program. It's an incentive for you to develop the property, and down the road, the borough would receive that higher assessed value, and the owners would pay on that higher assessed value down the road. So eventually you're going to get the value, but it'll be an incentive for people to move ahead today versus maybe never moving ahead. So the consultants recommended this, as well as the capital projects plan. There's some other financial plans. There's a plan about the retreat. So there's other plans in there. Yes.
Who develops the rules and regulations by the council?
Yes.
Or is there already somebody has that?
There's a kind of a format through the state. I mean, the state passed a piece of legislation saying municipalities could do this. So there's an outline, but generally speaking, the municipality outlines the graduated scale.
So you'd have to come up with parameters, what's included in that and what's
Yes,
not, basically.
yes.
So rather than just general maintenance, wouldn't be a expansion project.
Yeah, yes, we'd figure out what qualifies for, the waiver. But I can tell you, many municipalities around State College, Altoona, a couple other places around us have this program. We can look at what they did, and you can tweak it a little bit if you want to. But there's a lot of examples right around here in central Pennsylvania of the program. So this was meant to be an overview. It was not meant to get into the weeds. We just kind of wanted to give you, an outline of what we anticipate, what the finance committee, what the staff, what even, council in the work sessions is going to be dealing with, and some of the challenges we have in the next couple of months. But going over that, if you have any questions, we'll try to answer them. And then once we're done, Lori does have a few funds, FUNDS, to go over, if we have a few minutes. But any questions of what I went over, or something maybe I said quickly and you want me to go back over it?
Do you have a timeline on that? Word on it, or?
Well, ideally, I think we want to try to get it, as close to the new year as possible. The reason I say that is, us in the county are setting our budgets. I don't know if they need to know anything before December. Now, the school district, it doesn't set their budget till July 1st, but I think we want to get word to the county that this is something we got to have their partnership on. So my timeline for the county would be as soon as possible, contact them and let them know we would like to talk about alerta program in Bellefonte Borough.
With the commissioners?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the commissioners are gonna have to make the decision on behalf of the county as to whether they want to do it or not. I can say there's history of them doing it, so that's positive, in the county. All right, I'm gonna turn it over to Lori and see how, if you have any questions, just let me know, or you can always give me a call later. I'm sorry, John.
I would just say one thing, the population numbers, those numbers for Bellefonte were before Centercrest departed, so we're a little bit lower.
It's 220 less than what was shown on that
Yeah.
screen.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, the numbers are, yeah, you're right, and I know Joanne was trying to mention that as well. Yeah, they take the numbers at a certain day, which was before Centercrest relocated. So yeah, the numbers are actually down a little bit further. So it's, things change. I'm sorry, Doug. Well, I know looking at the assessed values, we were talking about them. There's years where there's a negative assessed value. So, we either some property owners challenge their assessed values, or we lost the building somehow through fire or something, but we're just not growing enough to really make a difference. So to keep up with the costs, we're struggling in that area. Mr. Johnson?
Say thanks, Ralph. That was very well done.
Thank you.
And it does enlighten the public, the struggles that we're having in the borough to keep things afloat. So
Thank you.
I appreciate your efforts.
No problem.
Doing that presentation.
Thanks.
Okay, well, welcome to another budget year. There we go. We'll start with street lighting. I think street lighting is pretty straightforward and easy to grasp. So we'll start with street lighting. And as Ralph said, we levy a tax for street lighting, so it has to go for street lighting. And last year we moved some money from street lighting to the general fund. We moved some millage around. So it has 0.6 mils of revenue or taxes, and it's basically used to light the street lights. Now, one thing we started this year, we're going to finish next year, is we are upgrading, replacing the poles and the tops. So the poles we're getting this year, and the tops we'll get next year. So there is a higher repair upgrade number in there to reflect that. One of the hard things that I'm hearing from everybody this year is nobody wants to set a cost and stick with it. Most of the costs are guaranteed for 10 days. If they'll go to the end of October to guarantee the cost, that's really good. So those numbers are estimates. I did try to pad it a little bit, but it could go anywhere. It's not a guarantee that it will be 50,000 or 70,000. It could be a lot more. We'll just kind of have to play it by ear when we're ready to order them.
So when you're talking about the increased expenses, are you talking about the repair upgrade expenses, or are you talking about the electricity expenses as well?
No, just the repair upgrade. I did increase the electricity expense by about 5% because we were just talking this morning that natural gas is expected to really, really, really get expensive, so I would expect electricity to go up as well.
The reserves, what are they, where?
It came from the savings, John, over the last 2 years. When we switched over to LED lighting, we probably saved $40,000 in electricity bills over those 2 years. So, and we had talked to council the previous years about this, and we left it that way so that we could build up a reserve because we knew that we needed to replace some of the poles and globes out on West Lynn Street and Allegheny Street, where there's those older versions that we currently have. So that was the purpose, and that's where the savings came from.
So in our out years, that work will no longer need to be performed, and we'll still be okay with the 0.6 mil type funding for street lighting.
I think that's what currently where we're seeing the bills, although Lori is taking into account for us, an increase that we anticipate in 2022. So, but we're still saving a lot of money with the LEDs as to where we were a few years ago.
Okay, but it's not, when the expense goes away, we anticipate the expense going away when the reserves are exhausted, so, okay.
Yeah. And then the only thing I would add that, the reason that we're holding off on purchasing the globes is because we had to find a new distributor. So the poles that we're getting are similar to what we currently have in terms of aesthetically how they look. The globes are a little bit different, and Craig, our electrician, is getting one. It's kind of a frosted globe. So we're going to probably once it comes in, we'll have building and property take a look at it and see if that's what if that's the direction you want to go in. But there'll be 1 or 2 options for the globes, but we won't know until it's not supposed to be here for another couple months.
Okay.
Yeah, he told us that it's a 12-week, it's 12 weeks from the time he orders it till the time it gets in. So that's another problem that they're having. All right, so we can do liquid fuels, which is...
Can I ask one question quick? When we're talking about savings, how do you monitor the change we made with APPI, I think, as far as doing our electric as our delivery?
Well, that's a good question, Randy. We're locked in for a couple of years, so we should be okay as far as increases in electricity. And I don't have the terms in front of me, but the prices are locked in for at least a couple of years.
I just wondered what they were, and so we can catch it later.
Yes.
So maybe with that 5% we may not
Yeah.
need, but that's a good cushion to have, so
Yeah.
that if the pools end up coming, or the globes end up coming in at more, we'll be all right. Okay, sure, liquid fuels. Liquid fuels, as Ralph indicated before, the income for that is state aid. They take into account how many miles of roads we have and do a formula, and so we've been getting, next year they sent me a thing that said that we should get 168,892. So that's, last year they predicted 166 and we got 171. So we may get more, but we may not. This fund is highly regulated by the state. They come in and do an audit just on this fund. You're allowed to buy equipment for the streets. This is how we pay for our salt for the streets in the wintertime. It's how we pay for the paving that we do. We can pay for storm sewers and traffic control devices. So we try every year to do a paving project, and we try to keep it about 100,000, a little below. We can use it if we have a really, really bad year for snow. We pull money from other things. We cut out other things, and if we have a really bad year, we can use it for wages. I think we've done that once in the last 20 years. But it is there if we need it. It's really hard to predict what the winter's going to look like. So we kind of keep that in there as if it's a really bad winter and we have to move things around, we will. Matt completed some stuff he wanted. He recommended keeping the storm drain. I know they're looking at the one out on Bishop Street, I think it is. So he wanted to keep the funding in there for the storm drains. Plus, they're gonna still try to do a couple more this year, so they'll probably try to do a couple next year. Again, the paving. And he was asking for a T-tag and plow. He said that they use those really hard. One of the things in this fund is you're allowed to use 20% of your allocation each year toward major equipment. You can carry that money if you don't use it. But his estimate of 96, almost 97,000 is more than we have in our major equipment. So he asked if we could take some from the general and some from this fund. So we used 87,000 from this fund, and then 10,000 from the general fund. So the other thing he's finding is if we don't place the order for this by the end of this month, we will not get it in 2022. It will not get here till 2023. So, and then he was gonna put the paint machine into the general fund, and we checked, and you can actually use liquid fuels, Highway 8 for that. So he asked that that be moved over. So the paint machine is also in there.
So is that in the table you put in, or does that still need to be updated?
It's in there.
Okay.
So that's the things that he asked for that he felt would be needed in liquid fuels. Any questions?
What's the millage on this one? Oh, that's right, because it's, wait, sorry about that.
Are all of the reserved funds from unused liquid fuels
Yes.
from previous years?
Yes.
Okay.
So there have been a few years that we didn't do any paving. So the years that we don't, that money just stays in there. You cannot move that money out of there to use for something else. It
Okay.
just sits there. So it always carries a surplus. So that is where that money comes from.
Randy has a question.
Question? This is Randy. So where is it coming out of the general fund? What section of that, is it $10,000 comes out of?
Well, we haven't done the general fund yet, so it will come out of streets when we do that.
Streets.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Is it anticipated that the liquid fuel funds will start to decrease in future years?
I haven't heard anything. Have you?
Well, there's two answers to that. They remember a couple years ago, they went to a new permitting format for licensed vehicles and so on. So I think that would actually increase the revenue. However, there's a lot more people driving electric cars. That's probably having an effect on the gas tax.
But there's
So-
also legislation
There-
to
yeah,
fix that
I'm
problem.
answering the question. Okay. So, and the state is looking at really revamping how gas tax is collected and paid, or whether you pay per vehicle, a flat rate per year. That's what the discussions are. So it'll change, but it just hasn't yet.
Okay.
guess there's always the chance that they can reduce it, just like anything
Yes.
else.
But as their sources of funding change with EVs and
Yes.
more efficient vehicles and
Yes.
all those other factors, they're trying to compensate by shifting fees to other sources.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, is the funds in these liquid fuels, and this is more, I guess, more of a state level question, do these come out of that same budget line where the state police are being, the funds used from the transportation are being used for state police rather than?
I would like to say yes, and John's.
I think that's
yes.
correct.
Yeah.
Understanding too,
Yeah.
Joanne, it's that struggle, so it's a big time struggle at the state level that's impacting what the future of our liquid fuel revenue, or funds will be. So, yeah. I am not one to authoritatively speak relative to what will happen with the state legislature.
Okay, special projects. Special projects is just that. It's for any project that we do that is not within the normal course of doing business. So, one of the things that's in here is this Keystone grant, and we made a distribution in 2020 of the grants we got from the state of the $500,000. So they were only paying interest on that, but in 2022 they also start paying some principal. But that money has to just sit for a future grant. So basically there's not going to probably be a future grant for a long time, because we will want to build those funds back up before we have enough to grant out again. But that money does run through here.
This is the Gamble Mill loan, that funding from ECD.
So
Yeah.
which line is this? I'm not seeing it.
Well, the grant was 510.000, and then the revenue is 340 and 341.000.
Oh, and so the revenue that we see in 2021 right now is zero, but next year they're going to start paying back, and this is this 8,000.
No, we've gotten revenue in this year from the interest.
This year was interest only.
Okay.
Next year it begins principal and interest.
Not till like October, I
Yeah.
think, so it's not very much of next year.
Okay.
So, we also put the American Rescue Funds in here. So that was 326,000 that came in, and so that expense is also in here. That was money that we didn't know last year at budget time that we would get, so it was not budgeted. But we're also having the same expense in the same amount. So that's the money that's going to be used to redo council chambers. And then I think the rest of it, I know we're doing some stuff at the sewer plant, and I think the water's going to use some too. So that will go through here. And then the other thing that happened this year was we got grant funds for the Little League, and we didn't know we were getting those last year, so that wasn't budgeted, but that same exact amount will be dispersed out. We haven't gotten an invoice for it yet.
They
We're
haven't completed it yet.
We're expecting it yet this year, so that happens in here. We don't budget for it, but we got the bookkeeping for the Nittany Valley Joint Comprehensive Plan, so that money does run through here, but it's not money we have control over. So that's special projects.
So, under this American Rescue Grant Funds, a lot of what these funds are gonna be used for are things that we typically would be paying for out of other funds, correct?
Or things we may not have had the money to do.
Okay. So, when we're working with these funds, what is your recommendation for making sure that we clearly say that these are one-time funds and this is where the money is going to come from, and versus, so for, say we have to hire 3 people to do additional sewer work for 6 months, would that go into, under here, and it would clearly say that this was salary and everything to take care of those additional workers while we're doing this extra work? Okay.
I think what we're thinking of projects,
Yeah.
we're not thinking of
Yeah.
hiring
Right,
additional staff.
Right, but I'm
Yeah.
saying if that should happen, that's where
Yeah.
that would go. It's just
Yes.
an example I was giving.
Okay.
Yeah, everything that, like, we've already spent some money on the council room stuff. We've spent some money down at the sewer plant, so that's been expensed already. And the project down at the sewer plant, they're hoping will be completed this year, so that will go through. So,
I have a question. With that American Rescue Fund grant money, is there anything proposed for fire departments, equipment, things like that? Is there any way we could bring any money over from that fund to help the fire department?
It was very specifically written, Randy, the regulations, and that's why we picked water and sewer. That was really the biggest or easiest category. And then public communications for the council room was the other category.
Yeah, and
Unfortunately, that's, we're just going with the regulations associated with the
I
money.
wasn't sure, I've heard different versions of
Mhm.
where people are using the money for certain things in the fire department area, and I just wanted some kind of clarification, or if it's just talked. So,
yeah,
Ralph,
go from there.
the one area that that would fit, if, we probably purchase some of the fire hydrants, with that money, which
Yeah.
would be fit with the fire department, but that would be one option that that would fit with both water and the fire department.
and Lori, also there's a grant that the White House just recently announced for economic development that could be used for like wayfinding signs. We've been talking about how to improve getting people into town and around town. That grant is supposed to be out in March. If we were to apply for that, would that go into this budget under a special project?
we could, I think we ran the last one through the general fund, actually, but we could run it through here.
In addition to that, is that where you're gonna put the train station grant and,
We talked about the train station grant under bulk water,
okay,
yeah,
all right.
because there's a match to it, and usually if there's a match, that's what the bulk water is for.
Yeah, there's that, and then there's the suspension bridge that we'll hear on that in the next probably month or so.
Yeah, so, and if it's not a known, we don't have, yes, we're getting the grant, I don't put it in the budget because we could or we could not, so.
Okay.
It's hard enough to budget for things we know about, let alone what we don't. The next one is EMS. This one again has a tax levied specifically for it. The current tax rate is 0.25 mils, and I know they've asked for 0.5 mils, which I did put in here. When we decided to put the full amount, and we can decide what we actually want to do when we're making final decisions. But that full amount is in here. I budgeted on a 94% collection rate for next year for our taxes. So basically, the money comes in, and Scott gives me invoices to pay, and that's what I pay.
Well, let me understand what Scott's trying to do, appreciate his efforts, at least he's asking. But we have, we have a volunteer fire department, and we need to start putting some revenues somehow into this, or we may, where things, we're barely breaking even each year, and I see this year, and we haven't gotten to it yet, I know they're coming up, but, there's areas that we kind of need to spread our funds out a little bit more. So whether that would come maybe out of some of this, what is it, 47,930 that we would add to it in 2022 for the EMS, because that's happening in the townships, or whatever they pay into the borough, they're calculating what they're also paying to their EMS and their fire departments and the Bellefonte Fire Department, and in some cases we need more revenues coming into that classification as well.
Okay, the last one for tonight is the fire equipment. This is the fund that pays for all of the fire equipment loans. It does not do anything with the operating. So they have loans. I included in there the list of loans that they have. They have some with the state, the 2% loans. They have a couple with the banks and one with USDA. So that's set in stone. The first one that gets paid off is 2023. So we know exactly what the loans are going to be. They do pay a little bit toward office supplies and postage, not very much, but so that their biggest expenses for the fire equipment, the loans. So the county every year does a spreadsheet that calculates what the percentages are. We don't do that. That comes from the county. I contact Liz over there, and she sends me this spreadsheet that tells me what the breakdown should be between the borough, Benner, and Spring. And those are the percentages that I use. And then we do bill Marion Township, but we do them on a flat rate. We only do the portion of Interstate 80 that runs through there. So they pay just a flat rate. So those percentages, as Ralph showed, ours are going down, while Benner's and Springs are going up. Benner's the most. So given the percentages, it works out to what we have to pay. And in answer to Randy's question, because one of the Logans pay $10,000 a year, they wanted a truck that was more than we could afford, so they offered to pay $10,000 a year toward that. So with that, I recommended taking it down only 0.01 mils, but looking for maybe we could transfer that tiny little bit over to the fire department operating. So it makes almost no change, but every little bit helps.
What is the millage rate for this fund?
Right now it's 0.37,
Okay.
and I took it down to 0.36. Again, also because our portion is going down.
Okay, thank you.
That's what I have for tonight.
Thank you.
I give everyone a 5-minute break before the meeting starts.
Yep, sounds good.
Thank you.
So we'll
You're
take a
welcome.
5-minute break and then we'll be back.
Oh.
Thank you, Lori.
Yeah, thanks, Lori.
just my gavel.
I think they turned a blind eye to all this. It's pretty little.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. The October 4th Bellefonte Borough Council meeting is called to order. We had an executive session prior to this meeting on personnel issues and a work session to start looking at the budget for 2022. Do pledge of allegiance, moment of silence, and roll call.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Eaton? Here. Ms. Somboski? Mr. Johnson?
Present.
Mr. Pendergast? Here. Mr. Halderman? Ms. Tosti Vasey?
I'm here.
Ms. Cleaton?
Here.
Mr. Brackville?
Here.
Ms. Abbott?
Here.
Mr. Mayor Wilson?
Present.
So the first item on the agenda is any additions to the council meeting agenda, and I have two. Under Environment and Sustainability Committee, there's some communications from the Department of Environmental Protection. And under Safety, there may be a motion presented relating to local fire marshal services. Does anybody else have any additions? Okay, seeing none, do we have any public comment for any items that are on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Eaton,
I'll second it,
Clayton. I'd like to remove two items. The third one on streets related to Victorian Christmas and the Parks and Rec DBI Bellefonte Under the Lights. So let's do the others first and then come back to those and I'll ask my questions. Does anybody else have anything that want to be removed?
So,
Yeah, I'd like to pull the GBI small business banner because there's some discussion there.
Okay, so those three will be pulled.
so I have a question, Madam President. The Allegheny Street Verizon building, we're pulling that one and approving the motion? Or,
Oh, if you want the Verizon one, we can pull that one as well. That was not asked. He was asking about the DBI Shop Small, the Parks and Rec DBI Bellefonte Under the Lights, and the Bellefonte Victorian Christmas.
yeah, so if we don't pull it, we're approving
Correct,
the HARB recommendation at our last meeting.
right. So, do you want to move it, or do
Well,
you want to?
I read the letter.
So, why don't we remove it and we can
Okay.
have the discussion?
Okay,
That's the
thank you,
easiest
Madam
way.
President.
Okay. So the consent agenda will include the auction items for building and property, the August 2021 police report, the arts and craft fair request for August 5th and 6th, 2022, and the appropriate occupancy, what do you call the thing?
Certificate
Yeah, certificate of occupancy for
Appropriateness.
appropriateness for the 430 East Lynn Street. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. So, why don't we work backwards? So Doug, you did the Verizon building.
Yeah, I read the letter from the, I guess it was the architect or the facility manager. I can't get to it right this minute. I wonder what other council members thought about the response, and have the concerns been met for the resident that came in with the noise? Go ahead, Gina, thanks.
Yeah, I'll try to address that. I sent this letter to the resident who came last meeting and had the concerns, and he has already met with John Fenrenbaugh, who is the engineer on the project, who wrote the letter that's included in your packet. So, although I don't know the outcome of their meeting, I know that John was very receptive and open to talking to the resident and explaining the project to him, and hopefully reassuring him that, you know, based on this letter, if the hope actually is that the noise level may decrease with the replacement of some of the older units. So that's where we're at with it, you know. So they have a scheduled meeting. I don't know. I emailed Mr. Germano today and said, hey, can you let me know when you connect with John? He had written me on Friday and said, thank you. I have a meeting out with John. We're trying to connect, and then I emailed him today to say, let me know when you do and what comes of that, and if, you know, you still have any concerns. But it kind of sounded, the way I interpreted it is that Mr. Germano was very happy that he was able to communicate with the architect and the engineer about the project and just get some of his questions answered. So.
I sat in on the meeting with Gina and this John, the engineer, and I was pleased with the outcome. That they cannot move the equipment to the other side of the building. There's a row of computers or whatnot, mainframes or something that cannot be moved. This is a high efficiency equipment replacing old equipment, which is quieter. The thing about the maintenance, they actually went through Harb some time ago and proposed screens, which is the standard way of doing things over the louver.
Right.
Apparently Harb told them no, they didn't. They wanted a screen behind the louver, so that's what they did. But anyway, they're willing to work with whoever, but they do believe this will be quieter in the long run than what's there now.
Okay.
You know, so it seemed like an improvement. We were just trying to convey that message to the homeowner. This should be an improvement.
Okay. That answers my question then. If you feel comfortable with it, Ralph, and Gina seems to think that it's a positive response from the homeowner.
So I have one more question for you. So the homeowner have they said that, how do I ask this? When you sent them the information, and they said they were setting up a meeting, was there anything said about us holding off on voting until he'd had that and you could have feedback?
No, Mr. Germano, he did not specify in his email when is council revisiting this, can they not revisit this. For what it's worth, I interpreted that as he was happy to be connected with John and to have his questions answered. I think he just wanted more information, and of course that information wasn't given at the original Harb meeting because that was just more about aesthetics, and it wasn't in the Harb meeting minutes as well. And having John as the engineer be able to explain this project in a little bit more detail via this letter and maybe with a phone call with Mr. Germano, I didn't get the impression that Mr. Germano was still concerned, but that is just an interpretation of the back and forth emails with him. So, yeah.
All right. I'm gonna have to go on that information, both from our borough manager and from our
So we need a
zoning
motion on
person.
this
So
particular.
that answers my question, and I don't see Mr. Germano here tonight, and maybe was unavailable to attend. But it sounds like the communication has been made between the designer and the resident, and hopefully that bridge will stay in place, that if there's more concerns, they'll work it out. If not, I hope he comes back to council and we can help resolve it if he's not satisfied.
Sure.
So do you have a motion then?
I have a motion to approve the, let me get back to it. 217 North Allegheny Street Verizon Building approval of the original Harb motion from the September 20th, 2021 council meeting.
Johnson, and who shall second it?
I'll second it.
Prendergast? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? So moved. Okay, Bellefonte Arts and Crafts. Fair. Who removed that one?
I don't think anybody did.
You did, I think, Joe.
No, wait, oh, no, it's the DBI Shop Small, sorry,
Okay.
that's Randy. Do you,
Randy?
Randy?
Yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah, I wanted to pull that just to clarify, in the last paragraph, they talked about, they show a mock-up banner on the next page, but if this is, if this request is approved, they want the banner to go up no later than November 15th, and then providing ample promotion before Small Business Saturday on November 27th. And they understand that if a banner request is made, that this one would be taken down to adhere to the 2-week schedule if no other requests are made, and they hope that that can happen. So I thought that needed to be pulled out just to add that into the motion to approve this as it's requested.
Okay, so Randy, if that's what you're looking for, can you make the motion to that effect?
Yes, I'll make a motion that we approve the letter with the recommendation to leave the banner in place if no other banners are requested to be hung.
2 weeks through Christmas otherwise, okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, so that's Brackbill and Prendergast. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. Okay. And I move 2 of them. The first one is the Bellefonte Victorian Christmas. And the question I have is going back to some COVID issues. Bellefonte Victorian Christmas did a really excellent job working with us last year, trying to go through all of the very detailed restrictions we had through CDC in the state. Now the CDC has put Center County in what is a designated high transmission county for COVID-19, and as such is saying that everyone in Center County, Pennsylvania should wear a mask in public indoor settings. Several of these events, the Arts and Crafts Fair, the Santa Claus House, are all indoor settings. I would like to move this over to streets for them to review this with HBI like we did last year. They were very cooperative, so we can find out how they are going to be dealing with these CDC COVID guidelines. So I would like to, so we'll approve it tonight, but hopefully at the next meeting. So we'll move this to streets. The other one is DBEI Bellefonte Under the Lights. When I was reading, most of it's happening within Talleyrand Park. At the very end of their request, they said there might be some food trucks that would be out on High Street. I don't know how much that might impinge on the other businesses in town. I know we've had a lot of pushback from some of the businesses about the food trucks.
I thought we decided last time if it's a private event, it doesn't matter. If it's like a scheduled event, then.
Yeah, the events approved by council.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So what I wanted to do is to question if that's where we're at before we actually move ahead with that portion of it.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
if so-
otherwise, we wouldn't have food trucks at the Outdoor Adventure Expo or, Under the Lights.
Okay, so that was my question. I just wanted to clarify that for the
That's how
public's
I understand
purpose,
it.
that when borough approves an event that includes food trucks, that is within our ordinance that says that there's the one exception to the within 150 feet of a brick and mortar food facility. So just want to make sure the public knows that before we voted yes on it.
Okay.
Okay, so I need a motion to accept the DBI Bellefonte Under
I'll
Lights
make that
request.
motion.
Prendergast,
I'll second it, Clayton.
Prendergast and Clayton. Okay, any discussion?
Just a detail. Is this going to be on the gazebo side or the extension end?
The brick side, the gazebo side.
That may change, I mean, the planning has, right as this letter states, yes, the planning is just underway. They haven't really moved forward because of VOAE, but, they will come back with any additional requests.
Okay, so this would not be down on the waterfront the way it has been in the past?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All
Aye.
opposed? So moved. Okay, so that's the consent agenda.
Uh,
Yes, Randy?
Didn't we pull the HBI for the Victorian Christmas? I pulled that one, I thought, too.
Yes,
That
and
went
that's
to streets.
that's going to streets because of some additional questions that we need Sally. to
No,
add.
this is about the Victorian Christmas request.
Yes. The one that says Bellefonte Victorian Christmas Addendum Request for the week of November 15th to 20th and Decoration
Yeah.
Day.
Yeah.
So if you want, we could do a motion on the pre-preparations, but it's the December 10th and 11th items that we had the questions about that's going to.
Well, what I
schools.
wanted to add in there was the free parking time. Like, what would we do, like November 1st to January 30th?
No, no.
January 1st, I don't remember what it was.
That's a separate.
But I know we've done it, so we might as well do it now.
All right, well, that's typically a separate, complete motion, but it's usually Thanksgiving weekend through January 2nd or thereabouts, depending on
The
when
Monday
January.
after January 1st.
Yeah, whenever January 1st, if it falls on the weekend, would go to the Monday after. But we can put that on the agenda for the next meeting if you'd like.
Okay, yeah, you gotta do that.
So holiday parking on next agenda.
Yes.
October 18 agenda. Okay. Thanks for bringing that up, Randy. Okay. So moving on, anything else? Okay. Moving on to written communications.
First one is a letter from the Faith Center just voicing some concerns about the diamond improvements and particularly the loss of parking, so it's there for your review.
I have a question on that or a remark on that. When Dawn and I met with them and we discussed what was happening with the parking, those 3 spots that were on, I think, their side, or the 4 spots, they had requested that if we moved that crosswalk down, if we could put in a parking stall there, and I don't know if so much of a parking stall, but a loading zone, so that the trucks that they have coming in to collect or drop off have a way to do that. And I think when we had talked to them, we figured that could take place. So I wanted to kind of revisit that to see if that's still doable, because it looks like there's room there to do that. And they're using that space right now, but they're kind of pushed out a little bit, I think, because of the delineators that are in place there.
So, Randy, are you asking that we take the loading zone question to streets to review?
Well, we've got
Yeah, if that's what we need to do to push this through, I think so.
I'd say the whole letter.
Okay,
Isn't
okay.
there a public meeting coming up soon?
There is.
Yes.
November
Would
4th.
they be good to bring it up there?
I think it'd be appropriate to do it at the streets. They
I
could
agree.
handle it.
Okay.
Yeah,
I have a comment.
yep, go ahead.
We've worked hard as Borough Council to keep that accumulation on the weekends out of the doorway, and it seems to be sliding back to where it was before. And I don't want to add a parking, unloading and unloading space to keep that activity fueled. So I'm in favor of unloading and loading there, but you know, we've constantly asked them to clean that up on the weekends, and they did for about a month. So if this is going to enhance that, I think there are other directions that should be taken, and we can discuss that in the streets meeting. That's my thought right now.
Okay. So we'll move this letter to streets to address the loading zone issue.
Next item is there's a meeting coming up with CATA. It's called a Reimagine Study, and they're asking public officials to attend. The meeting's this coming Friday, October 8th at 9 a.m. You can attend either in person or through Zoom, I believe, but if you need the details, let us know. But The rest of the information is in your agenda materials.
Deb, you got some additional information for the public?
Yes, for the public, CATA is looking for input from people who use any of the CATA services, and even from non-riders. If you go to the CATA website under Reimagine, or CATA Reimagine, there are surveys that anybody can take. They're looking for specific input on what your ridership needs are. There is a drop-in session tomorrow evening, Tuesday, October 5th, at the YMCA from 5 to 7 p.m. There will be representatives from CATA and also their consulting group to get public information, and there is a public meeting at SCLO Library on Thursday, October 7th from 4 to 6. And there's also a link on the website to offer direct input if you're not able to attend any of those meetings. I don't believe this has anything to do with the current level of service. They're looking long-term into next year and beyond, but they do need as much information as they can get from the current CATA ridership.
So I have registered for this event on Friday morning. I don't know if any of the council members have yet or not. But if the public has any additional thoughts of these and can't attend these other ways to respond to CATA that Deb just presented, on your thoughts, if you could send us, either send it to the borough general email and forward it on to the council members for us for Friday. Tell us what is working well, what isn't working well, and what you envision for transit in the future here in Center County. And we will try to present that information on Friday when we meet with CATA.
And I plan to be at the YMCA tomorrow evening for that input session.
Any other comments?
I'm signed up for that as well Friday.
Okay. So Randy and Joanne are going. Okay. Any other written communications?
No, that's all we have this evening.
Nice.
Yes.
Office of Community Affairs.
There's a few notes here in your materials. The Planning Commission meeting will be Monday, October 11th. There is one administrative approval for a property at 125 North Allegheny Street. Of course, the written reports for code enforcement will be at the second meeting of the month, October 18th. If you have any questions, we have some staff here. We would try and answer them.
Any questions, comments? Yeah.
I'd like to make a statement, and this no way reflects anything that Gina does, because I think she does a very good job. But if you all read your report this week on that, there was another homeowner that came in and asked for a paint change, a paint approval for their house at 153 East Curtin Street. And this statement does not pertain to all hard members either. But first, I'd like to state that Mr. and Mrs. Williams did not ask me to bring this issue up to council, and actually discouraged me from bringing up the subject. I'm hoping all of you read the minutes of the hard meeting, and I would like to say that the Williamses are a couple that anyone would be proud to have as neighbors. When I read the minutes, I was appalled at the way they were treated, and from what I have learned from the board was less than cordial and were condescending to them. What was a simple request to change exterior colors of their house was an attack on their choice of colors versus their personal preferences of the board members. Not only were they subject to criticism of their color choice, they were suggested to remove their shutters from their windows, which had nothing to do with the painting request. In the 36 years I was on council, I supported Harb and thought Harb was there to help the homeowners with their projects. Now it seems they're trying to dictate their own personal views of what they want and not what the homeowner wants. The Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission manual for Harb, which they use, states that they have an advisory power only and can offer recommendations to the governing body. They do not have the power to change the will or choices of homeowners. As far as the standards for USDI guidelines for rehabilitating historic buildings, the guidelines assist in applying the standards of rehabilitation projects in general. Consequently, they are not meant to give case-specific advice and address exceptions or rare incidents. For example, they cannot tell a building owner which features on a historic building are important in defining the historic character and must be preserved, or whether features could be altered if necessary for new use. The guidelines for rehabilitating historic buildings stress the inherent sustainability of historic buildings and offer specific guidance on recommended rehabilitation treatments and not recommended treatments, which would negatively impact the building's character. I stress that there are no structural requests being made with this request. The only reference I can find in the manual on painting colors is one sentence under recommendations that says, repainting with colors that are appropriate to historic buildings in the district. I emphasize again that these are recommendations only. If they don't like the colors the owner picked and the owners do not want to change colors, then the conversation should have ended there, and the board should advise council and state they are not recommending approval and state the reasons for their decision. Then it is up to council to take the rejection or go ahead and approve the paint color request from the owner. The board does not have the authority to demand a paint color of their choosing or force the owner to adhere to their personal preferences. I would like to add that this owner wished to replace their porch floors a couple of years ago and was told they had to use Douglas fir for material, not what they proposed at an additional cost to them. However, the house next to them, only a couple of years earlier, was approved to install plastic composite porch floor in their home. Where is the consistency in that? Who in the board is able to say exactly what the original colors of any homes built in Bellefonte 125 years ago? Look at the home to the left of theirs. Is it painted Victorian colors? I think not. The next home is in need of a paint job, and the home at the corner of North Allegheny and West Curtin Street is brick and has been partially stripped of paint and has nothing done for it the last 2 years. At least I believe the board owes the Williams an apology and explain to them that they do not have to change their color choice if they do not wish to do so. I have to add that I believe that the Williamses have given up on a painting job and resolved to waiting for when they sell their home and let the next owner deal with Harb. And this afternoon I got a call from Corey from Pennsylvania Historic Preservation. This afternoon he reaffirmed that the board does not have the authority to force a homeowner to change the color choice that they wish to paint their house. And he said the only way they can do that is if Bellefonte has a defined set of standards, which we don't, for home colors in the historic district. So I think that they overstepped their bounds quite a bit. They talked about so many different things that had nothing to do with the paint color. And personally, and I know we can do this because we've done it before, I would make a motion to approve the colors that they submitted to Harb and let them see if they still want to paint their house, because right now I don't think they're going to do it.
I'll
At least
second
give
that
them the
motion.
option.
I'll second that motion, Buddy.
So, I just want to say, over the years, I've heard a lot of complaints about the board and about how they treat people, and I never really gave it a lot of credence back then when I was on council. But when you see what happens if people had their house for 35 years, and all they want to do is make it look better, make the town look better, and you have a house 2 houses down that has so much junk on the porch that you can't even see the house. And it's just not fair to homeowners to treat them this way. I'm sorry, but that's the way I feel.
And when you read the minutes, it's, well, the tint is slightly different. You know what? Give these people a break. Just like Mr. Halderman said, they're trying to improve it. We're trying to attract people to the town, not discourage them. I know when they bought the house, they know it's in a historic district, but come on.
They've had it painted several times since they bought the house, so it's not like they haven't done it before.
Jim, do you have any comments?
I have comments.
I'd like to have a roll call vote.
Sure.
I was wondering
Yes.
whether you wanted to wait till after, because it doesn't really impact the vote, so. My comments do not impact this particular vote at all.
This is the comment period if you want to use it.
Oh, but, okay, sure, okay. So, I just want to clarify a couple of things. I re-listened to the recording today. I don't know where to begin here. It was acknowledged in the Harb meeting after the Williamses left that the way that they went about recommending a paint color was really that it wasn't particularly tactful. It could have been, the delivery could have been better, and that was a discussion that Harb had. They had left the meeting at that point. I will say that during the meeting and during this discussion, they tried to make it clear that they were just, regardless of whether you agree or not, that they were just recommending a different hue of blue because the colors that were chosen all had the same hue, and they were worried about the contrast. So there's that, and at one point one of the HARB members said, we are just a recommending body. We are not telling you what to do with your house. You can do what you want. And then of course there were some confusion because shutters got brought into it. So I don't disagree with, I think Mr. Halderman's letter is necessary. I think that this was an unfortunate situation where there was a lot of miscommunication between HARB members and the applicant. So that's a separate issue. I do just want to mention, though, that I too had a meeting with Corey Kegerice, who's from the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission. We had a really great conversation for about an hour, and a lot of good stuff came out of it, and I just want to give a brief summary, if you'll indulge me. So he said that the PHMC doesn't recommend that HARBs review paint colors at all. He said that it's, of all the historic preservation projects, it's the one that's most easily changed, so he doesn't feel that HARB should get into that, because for a lot of people, paint colors are a very personal choice. And so they take it personal whenever those either aren't recommended for approval or there is pushback on the colors. And obviously, as we can see tonight, it causes the most political upset in the world of historic preservation. So that is something that I will relay back to HARB, and maybe moving forward, that is something that they could consider. He did bring up that we don't really have illustrated design guidelines. We did have them have design guidelines made in 2010, and he was not impressed with them. And he encouraged me, as part of our CLG, that those that Bellefonte is required to have published illustrated design guidelines to be a part of the CLG. And that he suggested that be something that we work on this year. He said that we can apply for a CLG grant, and through that grant we can use that money to hire a firm to work on new design guidelines. So we talked a little bit about what those design guidelines look like, why they're important for HARBs. And this is a really good example of why it's important to have published illustrated design guidelines, so that you don't end up in these HARB meetings where the HARB is recommending things maybe appearing out of opinion rather than saying, well, this is according to standard 7.2 in the design guidelines. So it's helpful to have the design guidelines because they're neutral, and they help the homeowners to have a better understanding of how to better historically preserve the house that they're living in. And it also helps the HARB to be neutral in their delivery and reviewing of projects. So my goal will be to hopefully work with Don and go under his wing and apply for this grant. I believe the deadline is in January, so we can get a grant and begin working on new design guidelines that then can be put up on the HARB website. And I think it was mentioned either in the past minutes from this past HARB meeting or the one before, I would really, just as a generalization, like to overhaul the HARB website. I don't believe and don't feel that it's user-friendly, and I feel like we can have some more information up there. So that was my meeting with Corey Kegerice. It was very informative, and it was, I believe, some good that came out of a bad situation that happened here. So.
Gina, I want to thank you, because that's the exact conversation I had with him today. We went over those exact same things that you said.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a good thing. Not this particular thing is not good, but what
Right.
you suggest is good.
Right,
So
yeah.
I thank you for bringing all that stuff up.
You're welcome.
But anyway, the bottom line is, he told me today, there's no reason that those paint colors couldn't be approved the way we're set up right now. they have no way of saying that they want to change the colors.
Any other,
Just to
questions?
clarify, what exactly is the motion that we're?
As I understand, his motion is to, accept the colors that the homeowners presented to Harb.
It would be deny Harb's request for the rejection of the colors and approve
Well-
the colors
Well, there's
proposed.
No,
They didn't
no,
reject
no,
it.
they didn't reject them.
They
They
tabled
just
it.
told them to come out with
Okay.
something else.
Right.
So we
Muddy,
would be
muddy blue,
approving
whatever
this.
that is.
I can read the exact colors if you'd like. So they're all
doesn't
here.
matter.
It does,
Okay.
it's fine.
Okay.
Can we have a roll call vote then?
That's what Randy had already asked.
Oh, they'll need it.
Well, we can do it
I asked
anyway.
Well, we had a council member request, and our policy is to do a roll call if they
No problem.
ask.
Okay.
So we'll do
Yeah,
it.
I asked for as well.
That, I
Okay.
just said that.
Okay, Mr. Eaton.
I'm not sure what I'm voting on.
You're voting to
To
approve the people.
allow the
choice of
homeowners
color.
to accept those paint colors as presented. In a
The
nutshell,
homeowner's choice of color is voting, you're saying, okay.
Gina, what are the three colors?
It was in the packet.
Well, but that, okay, I didn't get that that was the motion and we were gonna say, okay,
That's-
their choice of colors. Okay,
Yeah.
fine, yeah, that's fine.
that's a yes. Ms. Homboski,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Prendergast,
Yes.
Mr. Holderman,
Yes.
Ms. Tosti Vasey,
Yes,
Ms. Cleaton,
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill,
Yes.
Ms. Abbott.
Yes.
That's all unanimous.
okay.
I want to thank council for making that better. I'm not sure that they'll go ahead and paint their house now or not, but at least they have the option. I really appreciate it.
Well, if they do, I hope it doesn't take as long as it did my house.
The life of self-interest.
Anything else on Office of Community Affairs? Harry? Anything? Okay. Then moving on, Mayor? Your turn.
Thank you. The police report was in your packet, and I believe that was approved earlier. If there's any questions for the chief, please ask them. I had a few today, and I went down and talked with them about it, so. Anything on your minds or any observations you've made, any questions you may have, please ask those questions now. If not, I'm going to bring this up now because it looks like the streets department, or the streets report is quite long. But over the course of the last number of days that I've been back in town, I've had quite a few people wondering what the cluster was down on the Diamond. And I just want to say that, you know, we go great lengths to preserve the Victorian or historical perspectives and design of this town. And then we go and throw 360 reflectors up right in the middle of town that makes it look like the entrance to an airport. I think it's overkill. I haven't talked to one person who thinks, I know it's temporary, I know I'm going to hear that, but right now, if someone paints their house candy striped red and white, and they say it's temporary, you'd all be going crazy. So I'm just telling you that everybody I've talked to, and there's about a dozen, has questioned why in the heck was that allowed to happen. If that would have just appeared overnight, council would be pulling their hair out. And here we have it in our historic town, not on the outskirts, not on the entryways, but right in the middle of town. And I just want to express my frustration along with everybody else's that I've talked to. I do understand that it has slowed traffic down, which is important, but once again, I think we did overkill on a situation. And it happens frequently with this council.
Just a question, how would you have done it?
I would have moved the crossing down and let it be just the way it was.
So not let,
The statistical.
just to show them where the curb might go, and
Well, I know what it's up there for, Mike, and I know what's gonna happen with it and everything, and what, but I encourage the people who wanna have a say in this, and I hope council will listen to what they say, to come to the meeting on November the 4th, here in council chambers, correct?
Yes.
And that's at 6:30.
Two days.
There is a second day, if you can't make 6:30, it's, I think 10 a.m. on Saturday, the 6th.
10:30.
10:30 on Saturday, the 6th, but the evening meeting is 6:30 on Thursday, the 4th. And that's all I have to say about that. I do want to thank the council members that made an appearance down at the Outdoor Expo and the Mini Music Festival. Ms. Clayton, of course, you had to be there, so that was your event. It was very well done. And Mr. Pendergrass came down, and it would be.
Mary was there.
Mary,
She had a booth.
I didn't, I'm sorry, Mary, I didn't see you there, but.
She had a
thank-
booth. She was tied up.
You were tied up in a booth. Oh, that must have been a fun booth. Anyhow, thank you for supporting the events in Bellefonte.
Thank you.
That's the end of my report. Thank you.
Any questions for the mayor? Or for-
Just one from me, and I appreciate the mayor bringing up the Diamond area. I think what we're trying to do is make things safer in Bellefonte. This is kind of where we're at with this project, but also would like to not only let the people know when the meetings are, but also to let them know that they'll be able to view posters of what the final project would look like, either with what we're showing now or the roundabout. You're going to have two different things to be looking at, and what the diamond will look like, whatever we decide in the end of this in November.
I thought one of the options in those, there were three options. One of the options was to sort of do what we're doing now, put curbing in green space, narrow the turning lane. The other option was the very expensive one with the roundabout, and the third option was to do nothing. So let's keep those three options on the table.
I also believe, just for the public's, if somebody has a grand scheme, brand new idea that no one has thought of, bring that to the public hearing as well. We want to hear what everybody thinks and what they think might improve, not only for the aesthetics, but for the safety of pedestrians and drivers here in town. So that's what these two public hearings are all about. There will be the two renditions that Randy just mentioned, but if you have other ideas, bring them on.
I would just remind people that they can email the
Yes.
borough with their sentiments, and also
Yeah.
if they can't make it. So.
Yes.
Or call your council, please.
Okay.
Anything else for the
No.
mayor? Okay. I have a very quick one-sentence report. If you're here in the room and you haven't already done so, please sign in before you leave so we can add your name to the minutes of this meeting. Thank you. Any questions for me? Okay, moving on to building and property. Frank?
Yeah, I talked to Ralph a little bit. We'll have to set up a doodle to see when we can meet and talk about this enterprise fleet leasing proposal and make a recommendation. And the second item was that I think we learned last meeting that one of the police cars, which was an unmarked older vehicle, was involved in an accident where the officer, I guess, got T-boned. Is that right? Woman ran a stop sign. Is that it? Yes. So anyway, we're going to look, I guess we'll talk about that and look for another police car, maybe an older one again sometime. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Halderman? Excuse me. Okay, moving on, Deb, finance and government performance.
Yes, this evening prior to our regular council meeting, we had a work session to begin work on the 2022 budget, do a preliminary overview. Thank you, Ralph, that was very informative. And I'd also like to thank the borough's finance director, Lori McGowan, for all the work she does on the budget, trying to get all the numbers to match, and apparently we're looking at a new police vehicle. The next finance committee is going to be at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, October 12th. And from now till the end of the year, we will be meeting bi-monthly on the second and fourth Tuesdays of each month.
And if we
At
need
10.
more meetings?
And if we need more, we'll be there. And that's all I have.
Any questions for finance? Okay, moving on to Parks and Rec. Melissa?
Our committee meeting notes are in the packet. I have no action from them, and our committee would like to thank the police department for continuing to patrol our parks. That's it.
Any questions for Melissa? Okay, moving on to human resources. John?
Yes, we, on September 27th, we had our last meeting with the, our Public Works employees that are covered in our collective bargaining contract. We provided an update to council in executive session prior to this meeting. The next meeting with the union will be at 3 p.m. on October 12th. There's no council action needed at this time.
Any questions? Seeing none, safety. Randy?
Yeah, I submitted a report that came out in the packet concerning our meeting with requesting assistance with vultures on was it Fifth Avenue?
Reynolds.
Missoula Park area, and there's no action that's going to be taken at this time. It seems like that issue has cleared itself up because these birds do migrate, and so we're going to come back to it in the spring of next year and see what returns at that point, and then move forward for that. We didn't want to take the chance of spending money on something and think we were successful, but the only reason we were successful was because they migrated. So we want to take a look at it again in the spring.
Good.
And then the next one I have, Dawn and I had met with Gary Lohr, our chief of the fire department, and we're talking about the SAFER grant, but then another conversation came up as far as using the Pennsylvania State Police fire marshal to come in and investigate fires in Bellefonte. Sometimes, if it's a weekend, you're going to wait till Monday or Tuesday the following week to have somebody come in. Some may take longer. And Gary's question, I'll say it, question to Dawn was, is he allowed to bring in the fire marshals from Center Region Code? Because they seem to be quicker in response. And Gary's concerned about the liability issue of saying something of how a fire started, but then somebody comes in a week later and does their study and determines that it was something else. So trying to avoid any kind of issues like that. So I don't know if it really needs a motion or if it's just something, if that's what the chief wants to do and they're comfortable with doing that. And they could go either direction, use the state police or use code. So Dawn, I'm gonna let you chime in on this one.
Yeah, I just said at the time, I thought if we brought it forward to council, considering that the past practice has always been that they used PSP for the fire marshal, that I think for flexibility, if you'd like to make a motion to give Gary that flexibility, I think that's what, that would be helpful to him.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and make that motion that we allow the flexibility to the chief of the fire department for Bellefonte to work with either the Pennsylvania State Police Fire Marshal or the Center Region Code Fire Marshal.
Wait.
Wait a second, okay, motion by Randy, who's seconding it?
Buddy,
Buddy, okay.
Discussion.
Okay, now
Chief.
Chief.
I didn't do any research yet, but in my experience, we've had, I didn't know this was going to be brought up tonight. I would have had all my, some things in order. We've had, since I've been the chief, at least 4 major fires in the downtown area. Fire marshal's been there within a few hours on every single one of them. I would ask you to hold off on your vote until we get some legal advice, because if the fire marshal's coming in, you know, the fire department will not be filing charges of arson or any criminal acts that are found. Say if the code comes in and does an investigation and like you said, he determines it was an accidental electrical, and the fire marshal comes in and determines that, you know, it was arson. You know, you have who has the training, who has more training, I don't know, but we're setting ourselves up for some major issues, and I think we better consult the district attorney before, and our solicitor as well. But I don't think that Center Region Code can file charges of arson if they found it to be arson. So
just to be clear, Chief, it isn't Center Region Code. It's just people that happen to work for Center Region Code that have the credentials as a fire marshal.
This whole thing bothers me because it's not on the agenda. We've
Right,
not done
yeah.
any research. For a bunch of reasons, this should not be acted on tonight.
right. So I would suggest that we hold off and let me do some research with the DA and see just where we're at.
Yes, I agree.
So do we have a motion to table
I'll make the motion.
until we have the information? So table. Prendergast, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Prendergast and Clayton. Motions table, have no discussion. So all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? So moved.
Let me ask you a question, see if you can tell me if I'm wrong. Years ago, didn't we, when the heating season came around, didn't we have the fire companies go in and do an assessment of downtown buildings to see if there was any fire hazards or not?
It must have been way back, buddy. I
I
don't
was thinking
remember.
we did that, but I didn't, do you think we could start a program like that where we could go in and look, or is that the liability too?
It's
that-
certainly liability.
Well,
yes.
with the ownership of a couple downtown buildings, I think it would behoove us to be proactive on telling them if they've got fire hazards in their buildings, basically, if they agree to let you in.
Well, currently we have a commercial fire
That's right.
program that
That's
they
right.
get
Is
inspected
that the same?
Yeah.
How often we do that?
Once a year.
Yeah.
once every 2 years.
Okay, but I mean, at least that's it started after the big fires in town.
Yeah, I thought we did something, but I couldn't remember if they did that every year or what it was. But it's a good idea to be proactive for those buildings downtown, so. All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other?
That's all I have for safety.
Okay, any questions for Randy? So, no, Randy, just FYI, I was talking to an individual this afternoon, again, on a thing. She said she actually saw one vulture here in the last 2 weeks. So, based on what we had at the meeting and this, they basically have gone. So,
That kind of broke up, so I didn't hear some of that.
He was just saying that the vultures seem to have gone.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Moving on to water, refuse collection, and compost. Doug?
We have a authority meeting tomorrow night at 6 p.m. here in council chambers. Just wanted to check with our manager and assistant manager. Leaf collection is supposed to start this month, I believe. At least in my trustee newsletter, it says October. So residents, what do you think, next week?
Probably,
2
they'll
weeks?
probably start making the rounds. I mean, they have to have something out at the curb to sweep up. So, and it's all based on the change in the season, when the leaves start coming down, when they get to the curb. So they'll start making light passes as they see some piles out. So probably about the middle of this month, for
Okay.
sure.
And then along with that, the grass and brush collection ends November 17th, which is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, just to prepare folks that that's going to happen. You still can, believe, access a Musser Lane Recycling Center after that brush and cans are no longer picked up on the streets. Okay. I think that's, we also have a volunteer application for reappointment to the Borough Authority. The gentleman's term ends at the end of this year. I can make the motion to approve the applicant. I will make the motion.
I'll second.
So, we can have discussion. Or we can approve him. He's been on the authority for more than 20 years and has great interaction.
How many applications do you have for that position?
None. One.
Just the
One just came in over the weekend.
Oh, did it?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
So you should review those applications before you vote on them.
We can do that.
so our procedure was so we can help make sure that the entire community has a chance to participate in the governance of the borough. And often the first stepping stone are these ABCs, is to wait until we have gathered all of the people who want to be apply and anybody who's new, and then make the considerations in December. And that's where I would be. I'm not saying that, how I would vote on any one of these, but I want to be open and consistent for every member of the borough in doing these ABC appointments.
So we do that consistently with all of our appointments.
So are we moving a motion at this point then?
I can do that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else for water refuse?
No.
Okay, moving on to streets.
Okay, hopefully we can make this take less time than it looks like it will take. We met on the 23rd and the 30th. I was not there on the 23rd, so I'm going to work backwards from the 30th because I was there for that. We had both Lance King, who is the arsonist with the arsonist. I was practicing in my head. Arborist, not arsonist. Arborist.
That's good.
And I still the arborist.
There you go.
Oh my god. The arborist. All the talk about fire. It's gone now.
That's all right.
The arborist for State College Borough. And Tim Mattis, who is a Bellefonte resident and a landscape architect. We had them both in our meeting via Zoom, and we also looked at a bunch of other options that other cities around the country have come up with for planting and not planting the area the right of way between the street and the sidewalk. And so I think we all have a lot more good ideas than we had when we started this process, and we are going to continue thinking about that, and we're going to talk about it again this week, but we don't have anything to any motion to make at this time. Then back to the 23rd. So we did have Pannoni there talking a little bit more about the diamond. As it has been brought up, we do have those meetings on the 4th and the 6th that we encourage everyone who has some good ideas and opinions about this to come forward and to talk to us or to send emails. I know that what is there, and it is all pretty much installed at this point. It may not be a thing of beauty, but I do feel, I walk through that area a lot, and I encourage people to take a walk around that area, and in addition to the slowing of traffic, what I really notice is that I am a lot more visible when I'm crossing the street, that I am, that that the amount of street I have to cross is shorter, and that when I'm waiting to cross the street, I am more easily seen by traffic, which was the goal. So, you know, go walk around, see what you think, and do keep in mind that what is there is not permanent. Another.
Before you get away.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I just want to state again, the traffic flashing signals that I proposed 2 or 3 times so far in total wasn't legal, wasn't PennDOT approved. They are PennDOT approved. I have copies of the letters that I got from the manufacturer from PennDOT. And there's 2 of these installed, one in Lewistown and one in Carrolltown. So I suggest if you get over to Lewistown, stop and look at these, because it's a good alternative to what's up there now in the Diamond. When I came through town the other day, I thought I was in a mall parking lot at a car rally, but I didn't know if I should duck or what. But anyway, it certainly doesn't help the historic district having all those pylons sticking up there. I agree with the mayor. But anyway, take a look at that as another option for crossing pedestrians there.
And we have talked about that a good bit in our meetings. What has come up, but from multiple different sources, is that they are a nightmare in terms of upkeep, and that a lot of places that have installed them, they are no longer functioning because they do not.
I saw that letter from PennDOT, but I don't think that applies to these 2. So I think we need to talk to Lewistown Borough Council and Carrolltown and find out what their story is, because these are pilot programs that are approved by PennDOT. They said it's a 3-year program. If it works in 3 years, anybody can get to know. So we could get one now for one of them.
Gary,
Mm-hmm.
where did you get the input that those signs weren't approved?
Well, so originally I had thought, and I thought it was just something that came up in a meeting that, oh, we had tried this before and they weren't approved. But I got a lot of new information early on, so I might have, my brain might have totally made that up. But in terms of them not working, I mean, we were getting, you were talking to multiple sources about that, right?
Yes. Both PennDOT and these engineers
And,
said there was maintenance problems.
and I remember part of the conversation, like I said, there's been multiple conversations about these lights, that yes, PennDOT does allow them, but it's on a case-by-case basis. It's not that they're automatically say that they're great for everywhere. So, and Pannoni said that with this particular makeup of this area, it is likely that PennDOT would not accept them for the Diamond.
Well, at any rate, we can have PennDOT look at them if it turns out to be an option from the.
Yeah.
I have a question. Did Harb approve the pylons up there in the middle of town? I'm just saying, they approve everything in the historic district, so I'm just wondering if they reviewed it.
Go on, Larry.
Okay. The League of Women Voters signs, that was something the Streets Committee was looking at. I think at this time they, in conversations with Harb, is that correct, that we asked Harb about them, and also looked at what's currently there in terms of the hometown heroes, and found that they would not be, they would not work well with what we already have there. So at this point, the Streets Committee would, and I would like to make a motion that we not honor that request from the League of Women Voters, and instead encourage them to put up a banner or banners in town instead. I am making that motion.
Does that motion need to be made?
I believe it does. I mean,
Okay.
because they
Yes.
requested, and so we have to accept or deny, right?
Okay.
Okay, so there's the motion to deny the under lower level banners on the street poles, and instead recommend to League of Women Voters that they consider a banner across Allegheny and High Streets. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved.
Some fun stuff, the Halloween parade, there is gonna be some road closures, from, starting along the parade route, and it'll just be a moving closure as the parade goes through, starting at about 10 a.m. On the date of the parade, which is October 30th. And then the T intersection there will, they would like it to be closed from, I think it's noon to 4, because of the trick-or-treating, in that area. Is that correct?
Well, that was what
No,
was-
no,
Oh,
that
did
was
I
what
miss
they,
that?
that's
Well,
what they requested.
Yeah.
Oh.
What
committees-
we agreed to was to close the roads until noon.
Oh, okay, all
And-
right,
and-
sorry, I missed that.
Sorry
So,
about
not after that.
not noon to-
From
okay.
noon to 4, they would be open just as normal. And she was going to go talk to Karen afterwards, so Sean, can you confirm that?
Yeah.
Sorry, I wasn't at that one.
Sean?
So it's gonna be closed until noon?
Yeah.
And we want to clarify, you know, as Mary said, it's a moving closure, so not all the cars are off the road, and, you know, even when during the parade, the whole town is not really shut down as, like, say, the car cruise comes in. So we'll have to work, you know, get on the same page and get PennDOT approval. But I'm not sure we can do a complete closure till noon is what I'm getting at, so.
It starts at the elementary school and
Yeah.
goes
Right.
to,
Goes down to Talleyrand Park.
okay.
Right. So what they said was that they wanted to close, definitely close from Lynn to the Lamb Street from 10 to 11, because that's where they're doing all the setup. At 11, they start moving down to Talleyrand Park, and that's
Okay.
when the moving closures will occur.
Yeah, it shouldn't take that long to get to Talleyrand Park from there. So. Okay, I'll talk to Karen, we'll get with PennDOT. We might be able to, I mean, for that short amount of time, we can close the whole thing, and
Okay,
so, that shouldn't be an issue.
all right, thanks.
So,
So do we need a motion to approve that? All right, I would like to make a motion to approve the street closure for the Halloween parade.
I'll second it.
Abbott and Prendergast.
I would just say pending PennDOT approval, because they have the ultimate say.
Okay, pending PennDOT approval. Discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? So moved.
Okay, we're still waiting for the information on the reindeer race. We have already approved the date for that at the last meeting. Can you talk about the ornamental lights?
Basically, you know, we're, as Dawn mentioned early on, we're in the process of ordering some light. I think Lori mentioned it too in the budget session. We're trying out a different supplier and a new light system. So once that's in place, we'll have you take a look at it and make sure everybody's pleased with the type of light and what it looks like. And then we will order more of that same brand and everything. But it's part of the upgrades that we've been planning for a year or so. So as soon as we get it in place, we'll let you know.
Okay.
That's all I got.
And just out of curiosity, if everybody hates them, what do we do then?
Find a different vendor.
Go back to the drawing board.
Yes.
All right.
Keep going, Mary.
All right, that's all I got. What did I miss?
The last line, the temporary thing.
Oh, I thought we talked about that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Any questions for Mary? Seeing none, moving on to energy and environment. Mike?
All right, well, there's not a whole lot here. We got a newsletter from the APPI advisor. We also got, we have an application submitted for a Bright Cities grant, and Our committee will be meeting on Wednesday, October 6th at 4 p.m. We're going to discuss the Reimagine Appalachia resolution. No count. We're not doing anything tonight with it. We still haven't got the information back. DEP focus on energy newsletters in packet. The newsletter covers energy efficiency, energy management, alternative and renewable energy, and related topics that may be of interest and help in management of our facilities and for consideration when we are looking at climate sustainability within the community. Michelle Ferguson, Energy Program Specialist for Department of Engineering or Environmental Protection and Engineering Programs Office in Williamsport, noted that she'll be sending these newsletters to us on a monthly basis. And I believe that's the end of my report.
Any questions for Mike? Seeing none. Special committee reports. First one is the ad hoc committee meeting. Randy, since you took the notes, do you want to do the presentation?
Sure. So we discussed it was Joanne Tostabasi, Doug Johnson, and myself on the committee. We talked about the discussion of a 2-year rotation of leadership. That would be the president, vice president, and pro tem. We talked option one. The rotation would kind of be like where the president steps down after a 2-year term, the VP moves to president, pro tem moves to vice president, and council elects a pro tem. Or the section is they all step down, and each person stepping down can be nominated for the open position that they had not held the previous 2 years. Then we get into some further discussion as far as doing it annually. This is done, College and Patton Townships both do it, and we thought it was worth the discussion to see how that's working with them. So currently we have a dual calendar out there being selecting dates that everybody's available to meet, and that's what we're waiting for right now. So there's no action on this evening.
Any questions? Go ahead.
How does this impact the committees that we have? Being that the committees are more or less selected by the president at the beginning of the 2-year term.
I don't, personally, this is my own opinion, I don't think if we do the 2-year version, that it would make any impact at all.
Okay.
If we did the 1 year, then it would, and we'd have to put that into the discussion.
Okay.
That was not discussed.
Okay. I mean, I guess if we do don't we do a 2-year election now?
Yes.
The reorganization meeting?
What this is
Yeah.
basically doing, we'd be putting term limits on holding that position.
Okay.
Yes.
A question, since our terms as elected officials are 4 years and the group is staggered every 2 years, so we're not all up at the same time, you could potentially have a year where all of these positions are voted out of office.
Yes.
So then what?
I think that's some of the things that they have to look at.
It seemed like there's the potential where the rotation looks good, but there's a potential that everybody could potentially be voted out of office.
I did a little bit of homework. I think Randy first contacted me maybe a couple weeks ago with his interest, and he mentioned that at the council meeting, the last council meeting. It has to be by majority and understanding that this is acceptable. If the majority feels someday differently, they would vote and it would be by the wayside. But some councils tried it, some went back, some stayed with it. So to answer your question, it's always by majority whether it stays or goes.
Okay. Do we currently have term limits on any of these
No.
positions?
We can vote for a new president, vice president at any time. It's at the will of the council. So she could be voted out next month.
Or you could be president for life.
Hmm?
You could be president for life.
She could be, yes.
Well, I guess that's the question, what's prompting the need for the change?
Well, I think what's prompted it, and I think Buddy would agree, you know, as long as he served as council president, we are all equal, no matter who the president, vice president, or pro tem is. We all are elected officials, and we should each have an opportunity, if we choose, to have a chance at that position of leadership. Yeah.
I told Ray.
So, and I know some, maybe not everybody's interested, but there are some that are. And currently, when things are as they are, it's impossible to move with anybody else in that current position.
I told Ray, I thought that was a good idea. I was council president for, I don't really know how many years. And there was only one time, I think, Joe Height was president for a couple of years. But then, the next time it came around to vote, I got voted back in again. But I told him, I thought that was a really good idea, because we are all equal here. And give everybody a chance to be the president or vice president or whatever. I mean, the only reason I stayed here is I got voted in all the time, so I always thought I was doing a pretty good job, and that's the reason they kept me. But then I still think it's a good idea. Everybody have that experience, because it's a lot different from sitting here and sitting up there, and the amount of work.
Oh, yeah.
That president's job can take a lot of your time. So, but everybody has a chance to do it if they want to. So that was a good idea.
Yep. But I guess at the beginning of every 2 years, people can say, oh, I'm interested, and I've been contacted in the past by people saying, I want to run for this position, and would you vote for me? And I assume that they contacted other people, and then we have an election. So I don't, I mean, term limits sound great, I understand that, but I'm wondering why we're asking for this change when we already have a mechanism where people put up their hand and say, I want to run, and then we have an election every 2 years for who's going to be council president, who's going to be vice president, who's going to be pro tem.
Put some consistency into it, that you know that every 2 years, 1 year, whatever the term is, that there's gonna be a challenge. Or there, not necessarily, but there can be. It's-
Well, in my position, you know, I never ask anybody to nominate me or whatever, but anyway, I think now if you have a person that's president and they have 5 people that support them all the time, or 4 people that support them all the time, they're always gonna be president, no matter what. So you're never gonna have that change that some people on council might wanna do. You know, you can't get on if you have a group that always votes for the same person all the time. I think that maybe people on here feel that way, I don't know, you know.
But the makeup of council can change.
Yes, it does.
Every 2
yeah.
years, and every 2 years we do have a reorganization.
It's like you said, say
Yes,
next year you wanna be
yes, I can
president.
barely hear you.
That there's an election every 2 years that changes the makeup of council. And then at the beginning of that next calendar year, we have a reorganization meeting where everything gets shifted around anyway. So there's already a mechanism in place to change the leadership of council and also the committee chairs.
Since we have no action, why don't we just hold this at now?
We gotta wait for a doodle calendar anyway.
And we'll continue discussion later.
Yeah.
It wouldn't hurt to try. If you don't like it, you can always go back.
Yep.
Okay. Doug, do you want
Sure.
to do the other one?
Yeah, I'll keep it real short. The MPO, Center County Metropolitan Planning Organization met Tuesday, September 28th, 6 PM. The most, for us, Nittany Valley Planning Commission, but being on the seat, I sort of have a hat on for Bellefonte most of the time. It was, the coordinating committee reviewed and generally supported the initial project priorities for the 23-26 Transportation Improvement Program. The TIP lists 4 years of highway, bridge, and public transportation projects, as well as funding for the projects in Center County. The highway and bridge priorities include the 144 Drainage Improvement Project, the Atherton Street Drainage and repaving section of 154 project, and the Route 150 Phoenix Avenue. We've been trying to get this on the tip for many years, and it's finally come to the point where it's being recommended by the committee, and we're hopeful that it will stay or be on there. I have some other information. Thought I had it. It won't be finally approved until June of next year. So preparation for the 23-26 TIP is underway. A preliminary draft of the TIP is scheduled to be presented to the CCMPO committees in November. The final draft of the TIP will be presented in February of 2022 to be voted on by the coordinating committee. And then there'll be a 30-day public comment period which will be held in April and May. And the CCMPO is expected to adopt the new TIP in June of 2022. And we're hoping that stays on there.
And for the public's purposes, what happens once the TIP plan is approved? What happens with the?
Well, then
that
they go
plan?
further along with the phases of the design of the project,
So they're actually-
allocating money for it. So I think the preliminary engineering study has been completed, so we go to the next phase of that. And I can't tell you exactly what that is, but we are on the funding list after that, if we're on the TIP. And the TIP for highway and bridges, the allocation has been increased surprisingly 2.8% this year. We were fearful that it would be reduced. And the transit allocation actually went up by 9.3% this year for the 23-26 TIP. So that's good news for Phoenix Avenue, for the borough of Bellefonte. So far, so good. That completes my report.
Any questions for Doug?
I can't, I would say one more thing, that
Okay.
the project at the Y and Zion, I think it's 550 and 64, Nittany Valley, or Nittany, what's it called, the road, and 550. It's in progress and expected to be completed in August of 2023. And of course, we all know to avoid the Interstate I-99, Interstate 80 and I-99 project as much as possible. It's changing month to month, the road closures, but it is in process. So that's a good thing too. Yes, John?
Did you happen to see the Center
Gazette?
I'm sorry?
The Center Gazette, and they had a article about the PennDOT comments relative to a traffic circle.
I didn't see it.
Yes.
Yeah, they had.
Was it good or bad?
Good.
Oh, it's quite good. It's
Yeah.
talking about the safety improvements.
It's real good for PennDOT
Why is that?
because of the designing fees.
Oh, reduce fatalities. Tom's against reduced fatalities.
Well, I don't.
Yeah, that
No, no,
You know,
that one
end of the yardstick.
I thank you for that comment. The roundabout came about because it calms traffic, and data has demonstrated it's safer. And you know that.
I know you were the guy that put it out there.
I did.
and
But-
You should, I
But-
compliment you on that.
But,
Doug,
I-
that's what the article said.
what?
The article.
Well, that's what the data shows, and you know it as well as I do, John.
It's because nobody can cross the street there.
It actually, if you look at the design, it actually
saw it.
shortens
I saw it.
the pedestrian crossing.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm open to whatever works for everybody. I'm just going on the safety data, that's all I'm doing.
I suggest you listen to your constituents.
We wanna get out.
Let's move along.
Let's move along.
Ralph's, monthly report will be at our October 18th meeting, whole business.
Just real quick, before we get to that, Julie, I see you back there. I know you're from, she's with us from the treatment plant, but you went to an awards thing today. Can you tell us real quickly about that?
Come up to the podium.
You might want to reintroduce yourself to
Julie Brooks, I'm Assistant Superintendent for Wastewater. So I was at the WWOAP, so that's the Waterworks Operators of Pennsylvania conference today. So I received a scholarship, the David Long Scholarship. So he was a professor at Penn State. So it helps me with the degree that I'm going for public administration. This is my last semester, so that is a little extra there. So that was it.
Thank you and congratulations. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, that's all I have for this report. So, old business, we have some information. As you know, at the last meeting, we had discussions and we've supported a package for the airlines or the airport getting additional flights in from Charlotte. And anyway, the summary is in your packet just for your review. I don't think there's any need to go any further. The Diamond area safety improvements, we went over that. There's a meeting on November 4th, which is a Thursday at 6 p.m. And then Saturday, November 6th at 10:30 a.m. Both meetings are here in council chambers. And at least one of the meetings will be covered by CNET. You're always welcome to, as Buddy said, email the borough, stop in, look at the poster boards during the month of November. We're very interested in hearing all comments on the designs, ideas. As our council president said, we're open for any ideas you have. 2022 liquid fuels grant was submitted by Dawn to the county. Creation of Local Human Relations Commission is just an update. Our solicitor, HR attorney met with the Ferguson and State College solicitors, they're going to meet this month and discuss any concerns. Spring Creek Watershed Commission, I've not received the letter. I understand it's still forthcoming. Mr. Boncano from Jim's Italian Cuisine in Cherry Lane voiced some concerns with the September 25th Friday in the font, particularly the road closings and not being notified of the event.
Should we refer this to streets, his letter to streets?
Yes, probably.
Okay. So done.
That's all I have under old business.
I just have a question. I was out of town during the Friday in the Font. What roads were closed that affected Jim's?
Penn
think
Street.
Penn Street was
From
the
Cherry Lane to Bishop Street, Penn Street
Cherry,
Lane
yeah,
to
Bishop Street.
the
that
Catholic
little
Church
Penn there.
parking lot,
Yeah.
that section of Penn Street.
I got
Cherry
it.
Lane was still open, as I understand it. Mary, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that Cherry Lane was open.
I
I
don't
think it
know
was
how-
just the Penn
I
Street.
know.
How much of an impact that had. but-
All right, well, yeah. I just wanted to know which streets were closed.
Okay. Any other questions? Or any other old business? Then move to new business.
New business is a resolution with PennDOT. They would, on our behalf, work to change the railroad crossing as part of the bridge upgrade on Railroad Street. Looking for your approval.
Need a motion to accept resolution number 1004, 2021-01, railroad crossing upgrades at Railroad Street.
I'll make the motion to approve resolution 10042-021-01 railroad crossing upgrades on Railroad Street.
I'll second it.
And Brackbill and Prendergast. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? So moved.
Next item is a memo I put together on proposed legislation called House Bill 1841, where boroughs would have to take over cemeteries that are neglected or financially, I guess, abandoned. And it excludes second-class townships, and there's no funding that comes with it. So I think it would be advisable to write a letter recommending they put funding in it, include, if they're gonna have it, include all the municipalities.
I'll make that motion. I'll second it.
Eaton and Prendergast. Discussion?
We're first class all the way, come on.
So the reason I'm voting for this is because we have a burial grounds that are right on the edge of the borough that actually are mostly within Spring Township. And we've been trying to get the wall repaired there for the Quaker Cemetery. It's not a cemetery, it's a resting ground, for the Quaker resting ground for several years. It's outside the Hard District, it's just outside the borough limits, and the Friends meeting that owns it doesn't have the money to do the repairs, we understand. We've asked Spring Township if they could assist to help fix it, and they're not interested. I believe that if we could get funding into this bill, that we may be able to get this safety issue, because that wall falling down is, because it is a steep drop there, is not safe for people walking in that area. And people in that end of town walk through that area a lot.
Falls down, is it gonna be in Spring Township or?
I think spring.
So that's why I'm voting for it. Any other discussions?
I have one more comment.
Yep. Huh?
Oh, what I'd like to suggest is that
Yeah, we
when
couldn't hear you
people were
with the mask.
speaking, they were able to take their masks off so that the hearing impaired, like myself, might be able to see their lips. I don't think that's, that's something to think about for the next meeting. Thank you.
Need to vote.
Yes, any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of sending a letter requesting funding or removing that exemption for the second-class townships?
Aye.
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 All opposed? So moved. Any other new business?
No.
Okay.
Motion we adjourn.
Any other, we have one
Public
more
comment.
thing. Do we have any public comment on non-agenda
I'm
items?
sorry.
Okay, seeing none. Now do we
Now
have
I
a
can
motion?
make the motion to adjourn.
Prendergast. Who's seconding it?
And I'll second it, Rob.
Randy.
Brackbill.
Thank you, Randy.
Without,
No problem.
with no opposition, we are adjourned at 9:04 PM.
That's pretty good.
Ooh.